Okay, now that we've covered our introductory skills where we were simplifying fractions, converting fractions, writing equivalent fractions, we're going to put all of that to use to help us carry out operations with different kinds of fractions. So we're going to start out with adding and subtraction, adding and subtracting first. So when we're adding and subtracting, I kind of gave you a tip of that in the last video, that we need to have like denominators. In other words, we need to have the same size piece. So in this first one, it's just, we've got common denominators, same size pieces, so we can go ahead and add our numerators. We're basically saying we've got 4 of these plus 3 of these. That's going to give me 7 of these. The these is our size of our fractions, and that would be fifths. In this case, I can simplify because I have an improper fraction. So 5 goes into 7 one time with 2 left over. On my next one, I'm going to be subtracting, and again, I have like size pieces, so I can say 4 or 7 of these minus 3 of these is going to give me 4 of these, and that can reduce. I can reduce both numerator and denominator by 4. So 4 divided by 4 is going to give me 1. 8 divided by 4 is going to give me 2. So in this case, I was dividing both numerator and denominator by 4. So I was doing that skill where I'm simplifying. Here I was doing the skill where I was converting from an improper fraction to a mixed number. We need to do both of those skills at the end. Sometimes you do both of those skills, sometimes just one or the other, when you're completing an operation on a fraction problem. Okay, so we're going to move up here and we're going to start looking where we have unlike denominators. In other words, I have 5 6 and 7 tenths. I do not have the same size piece. So I need to rewrite this so that I do have the same size piece. I need to try to find some number that both 6 and 10 go into. I could multiply 6 and 10 together and get 60, and that would for sure work. But I want to try to find something smaller just to keep my numbers small. So I know that 6 and 10 both go into 30. So I'm going to rewrite each of these with a denominator of 30. And this is where you're going to use that skill where we are writing an equivalent ratio, equivalent fraction by multiplying to higher terms. So how did I get from 10 to 30? I multiplied by 3. So I'm going to have to say 7 times 3 is going to give me 21. How did I get from 6 to 30? I multiplied by 5. So I'm going to have to take the numerator and multiply by 5 to get to 25. So that was the skill where we were writing equivalent ratios by raising to higher terms. Now that I've done this, I can go ahead and say that I've got the same size denominator. I can add the 25 plus the 21, and I will end up with 46 over 30. Now I need to start thinking about how do I reduce this. I'm looking at that, go on their even numbers. Anytime you see even numbers, I would start reducing by 2. So 46 divided by 2 is going to give me 23. 30 divided by 2 is going to give me 15. Now I recognize it's top heavy. 15 goes into 23 one time with 8 left over. So 1 and 8 fifteenths. Now this next one we're subtracting, but again I do not have like denominators. So I'm going to have to write equivalent ratios. And I'm going to have to multiply both of these together because there is nothing smaller. And I'm going to have to go with their common product of, common multiple of 40. So 5 goes into 40 8 times. That means I'm going to have to multiply the numerator by 8. That would give me 16. 8 goes into 40 5 times. In other words, 8 times 5 gives me 40. So 7 times 5 is going to give me 35. Now again, I'm subtracting. I have to remember my operation here. So 35 minus 16 is going to give me 19 40ths. And very often when we're subtracting, there's not very much that we can do in terms of reducing. Okay, so moving on. This is mixed numbers that I'm going to be adding. And in this case, I have like denominators. It's not a big deal. I don't have to do any converting. I can just go ahead and add. You want to start here. You're going to do this first. Take care of the fractions first. So I'll have 1/5 plus 2/5 is going to give me 3/5, and 2 plus 5 is going to give me 7. That one could not be easier. This one we're going to be subtracting, and again we have like terms, but this is going to be a bit of a challenge. When I'm looking at my fraction, I have to start with the fraction first. 2 minus 3, I can't do it. So I'm going to have to borrow. So I'm going to borrow from this 3 and make this 2. This 1 that I'm borrowing, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to write it as 5/5. Because remember, any number over itself is equal to 1, and I want to write it with a denominator of 5 so that I have a common denominator. So that 1 that I'm borrowing, I reduced it, 1 from the 3 down to 2, but that 1 that I'm borrowing, I'm going to write it over here as a fraction so I can add it to the fractional part of this. 2 plus 5 is going to be 7/5. Now I do have a numerator large enough that I can subtract and take 3 away from it. So 7 minus 3 is going to give me 4/5, and then 2 minus 1 is going to give me 1. Okay, so for our last set of problems, again, I'm adding mixed numbers. This time I have to find a common denominator. So 3 times 5 is going to give me 15, so I will use a denominator of 15. How do I get from 5 to 15? I multiplied by 3, so 4 times 3 is going to give me 12. How do I get from 3 to 15? I multiplied by 5, so 2 times 5 is going to give me 10. Now I can go ahead and add these. So 10 plus 12 is going to give me 22/15. But before I go on any farther, I want to recognize that this is an improper fraction. It makes sense that I'm going to have to say 15 goes into 22, and I'm going to write this over here. It goes in there one time with 7 left over. So I'm going to rewrite this as 15 goes into 22 one time with 7/15 left over. So now I can go ahead and add up all of these. So 9 plus 5 plus 1 is going to give me 10 and 7/15. So in here we're going to be writing a common denominator again. I can't do any subtraction until I have a like-sized pieces. My common denominator would be 20. I got from 4 to 20 by multiplying by 5. So 3 times 5 is going to give me 15. I got from 5 to 20 by multiplying by 4, so 4 times 2 is going to give me 8. Now I've got the same dilemma here. I can't say 8 minus 15. I'm going to have to borrow. That 1 that I'm borrowing, I want to go over here and write it as 20 over 20 so that I can add these together. And then I would have 28/20. And yes, that is now large enough that I can take 15 away from it. So 28 minus 15 would give me 13/20. 2 minus 1 is going to give me 1.